So you may have noticed we have 3 new faces up the front.
Yay!
So over here we have Kimberley Manning from Canstar. Thomas...
Guthmann.
Sorry, actually was waiting. That was right. Thomas Guthmann from... I always do. Trish Khoo from Hogfish.
Whoa, from nowhere!
And yeah, so let's get started.
Cool. So I'll run around the audience, put your hands up if you want to ask a question. I'm going to lead us in with a question before I run out to the audience.
I have a question.
And my job is to tell people to stop talking when they talk to us.
So an obvious tenet of DevOps is that all of your engineers should know how to deploy. Should your accountants as well and other business support people?
You've done it right.
There is a person in this room right now who has a mate who built a button. Where is that person?
Me, Kieran, built the button.
Who could deploy?
Anybody. Anybody in the office. The cleaners.
Plant.
Totally not a plant.
The cleaners could deploy.
Yeah. Anyone who walked past could smack a button and deploy. When?
2011 maybe?
11. I think DevOps is new.
No, it's not.
Dude, you could have sold that button for so much.
Kieran.
So, I guess slightly more seriously on that. Deployment should be trivial. It should be scripted, it should be easily discovered. So yeah, pretty much any half-competent engineer should be able to figure out how things get to production, and pretty much anybody who has even a passing interest in the product should be able to ask for a thing to go to production and will trigger it.
So the button, because no one else has the context, if you press the button, it deployed to test. If you held the button down for 4 seconds, it deployed to production. It was just sitting on a desk in the middle of the office. Anyone who felt like it could press it at any time.
Where did the requirement come for 4 seconds?
It was 4 seconds in Jira.
There were 4 LEDs.
Was that your request pipeline timeline?
Why did you even have a button? There were 4 LEDs on the thing that we bought with the button and the LEDs. So we lit each one up for 4 seconds, and if you waited for the LEDs to finish, it went.
Did you have to wear your suit to press the button?
I ditched the suit.
Okay,
And I have a question.
Actually, it's more of a statement than a question.
Totally not a plant, but this is for Damian. What do you think of the Agile coaches?
First, I need to have a stand-up huddle with a BA and a tester to decide what the acceptance criteria for what I think about Agile coaches is. An exit criteria, I've got one of those. It's over there.
Hello. A lot of what was discussed tonight seems reasonably straightforward. Why do organisations struggle with this so much?
Because they're stupid. And the dinosaurs are coming.
It's not that straightforward, I don't think. Like, it's straightforward in a team of 5.
In terms of common sense.
Yeah, it is common sense, but organisations have managers.
Yeah, I actually have a sensible answer for that.
Yeah, okay.
So, whoa, hang on.
Sorry, shall I hold you a bit?
Yeah, hold my bit. So, actual sensible answer for this. In the name of efficiency, companies in, I think, sort of 70s and 80s went, well, it's not efficient to have people that can do these things in all of these places. So that's where the silos forms. Like, we have this center of excellence. Like, we'll put all of the server engineers here because it's more efficient. And when you do that, those groups have to have a KPI that they work to. And so if you are a server operations person, your KPI is going to be uptime. So you're going to be measured as a team, and as a manager, your team is going to be measured on, do your servers stay up, okay? If you're a developer, your KPI is going to be how many story cards can you move in a week or an iteration or in a quarter or whatever it is. So because developers by themselves, they've got to be measured on throughput. So when you have misaligned KPIs, stuff goes wrong. So if you're a developer and your KPI is how many features can I get to production, but a server engineer is their KPI is, you know, what's your uptime of a server, you're not going to want anything near you that can affect the uptime of that service. You know, if your bonus is based on does the thing crash and it's working, you're going to fight tooth and nail to stop that from happening. So because we have that structure of different groups and different divisions and different KPIs, you really need to break down from the top that mentality. And unfortunately what happens is in that structure you've got managers, and those managers have managers, and those managers have group managers and program managers and directors and VPs and whatever else. And so to all of a sudden go, actually we're just going to totally mix this up, there's going to be a whole bunch of people who don't need jobs anymore because their whole job is managing groups of people, and not many companies are going to go, you know what, let's DevOps, and we're just going to fire 100 people.
Why is the conversation always that these amazing developers just came up with this brilliant idea, and these ops people who were just so scared of losing their jobs and just were so scared of their uptime statistics getting down, whatever, and they just resisted completely. Like, the story is always that the developers came up with this brilliant idea and the ops people were the ones who resisted. And sometimes like you dress it up and you're like, oh, it's because they're KPIs. It's not really the ops people's fault. It's actually, it's the KPIs. So I work for a company where DevOps came from the ops team and it's the developers who are resistant. I don't know if anyone else knows that.
Yeah. Awesome.
You should have been doing the talks too.
We tried. Next time.
And to that point as well, sometimes the developers don't have a bloody clue. And sometimes they don't even know that they don't have a bloody clue. Oh, well, it's just a server and it runs my program. Like, well, yeah, but you know, how many clock cycles does your program need to run? Oh, I don't know. How much RAM does it use?
All of it.
Well, my DevOps station's got like, you know, 16 gig of RAM, and it's like, well, that's nice. Do you know what production hardware we're running it on? All right. Do you know whatever else is hosting our Kubernetes cluster? Do you know how to be a good neighbor? No. Do you know what like 802.1q is and why we care about it? No. All right. Have you ever encountered PICs before? A what? All right. And you get all of these questions where the developers actually have no idea. Basically, they hit F5 and it launches, and then they think that that's all there is to it. Okay? So there's a whole lot of skill. It's not just that the developers need to be able to push stuff to production. Half the time, they don't even know what production should look like. So there's a really important trade of skills. That's why you want the deep generalists. You don't want just individually siloed people, because you still get the silos within the team. You want the cross-functional team composed of cross-functional people. And then, remember one of the points that I made earlier was it's really important that your engineers be able to teach. And that's not so that they can teach people outside of their own team, that's so that they can teach each other what they know within the team, so that they've actually got a more general capability across the team members themselves. But you make a really good point about it's not always the devs who are clever.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. It is a visibility.
And hiring.
Is there a place for the guys that just want to hit F5 and run it on their machine?
Government.
So we hear all about how infrastructure as code is fantastic, but what about if you write a bunch of infrastructure as code and you're actually in a startup? And this week you've pivoted 3 times already, and that thing that your code was pointing at is shifted all the way over here. Do we still have a place for DevOps in startups?
Yeah, we don't have a place for a separate ops team, right?
Yeah,
well, yeah, sorry, I disagree with that. Because obviously I'm an ops guy, so to start, if you have any ops question, I guess you can ask him as well. And I agree with you, that's not always dev driving everything. And, well, it's a very good question, because when, you know, your startup develops kind of MVP, everything's changed all the time, right? It's trial and error all the time. And then you have to change possibly everything, so you also have to be flexible. But it's not just a matter sometimes of changing just a line of code or anything, because you use AWS or use Azure or whatever you want, or if it's actually in-house, it's even harder to change something, but usually startup, I guess, use the cloud, right? So I would say you probably would do a few things manually first to see how you can do it, and then you will see patterns, right? Because in ops land, especially when you work for a software company, you're not driving the business, right? You support the business. The devs drive change. You help to host this service or whatever you sell the product, and then your internal customer is the developer or the developer team, and then you have to adapt, and then sometimes they will just completely pivot, like you may suggest, right? And then like, okay, what this infrastructure I just built with Ansible, which is maybe not that great sometimes, and you have to change everything. And unfortunately, I find sometimes it can be quite hard to redo everything, right? So I would say, if it's very complex, a lot of chances that your work may go down the drain. If it's simpler, well, you can reuse it if you use modules, whatever. But a few things have to be done by hand, I guess, sometimes, to know where you're heading. And when the company will mature, will be bigger, then that's where it's easier. If you use a company like you guys work at TATS, right? It's a massive company with a lot of it's a massive company with a lot of engineers everywhere. It's easy to split the work, but when you're actually supporting, let's say 16 microservices, right? You have a team of, let's say 10 developers doing microservices and just deploying a new one. It's actually
Stop doing that.
Yeah, I know. I know. But anyway, I'm talking, so maybe I didn't answer the question, but I can feel sometimes maybe you're playing there.
You know where, like after a while, after you've built the same thing a couple of times manually, you just kind of know. Like I think it's not something where it's like every single thing you ever have to do has to be in infrastructure as code, or you're not doing DevOps properly. Like after a while, you're just like, oh yeah, I've done this a few times. Let's write it up.
But I think it has a place in the startup because a dev team of 10 is awesome. We've got 2 people in our business at the moment. So I did do infrastructure as code because it's documentation for the next person that comes along. It's also documentation for me when I come along 3 months later and I've forgotten what I did. So yeah, you do some stuff manually and then you infrastructure as code it because it's executable documentation.
You do your own MVP. You see how it works and then see, can you use that bit? But
yeah, your customer doesn't care about your beautiful Terraform or your automation templates. They don't care.
Because isn't the point here though that it's not about infrastructure as code being DevOps, exactly as you said, it's about having a discussion between all of those sides and keeping them all on the same page so that you're all making decisions together, and then infrastructure as code becomes something that you use when it gets to the point where you can use it, but it's not when you don't, because it's waste when you don't. It's the whole lean thing comes out.
This issue is really the best definition, I find.
Thanks.
DevOps touch on you, right?
Yeah.
It's great.
I should have just stood up for 10 minutes.
So solve the problem in the most efficient manner possible. If that means you go down to Officeworks and buy yourself a web server for $800 and plug it into the wall and hook it up to your ADSL connection because you've got 5 customers, go for it. That's cool. When you've got 500 customers, that probably won't stick, and when you hit 5 million customers, now you better have CloudFormation templates or something equivalent. But there's a lot of wiggle room between 5 customers and 5 million. You can spin up a free app on Heroku, and it's literally just to get push and hey, I've got a web app. Hey, that's cool. You care about the value to your customers because they're the ones who are going to give you money. You care about the short-term value. You also care about the long-term recurring revenue or equivalent value you're getting from your customers. So yeah, it's great if we can ship a feature, not so great if we keep shipping crap and it keeps falling down and then we irritate the customers again. So at some point we also have to care about reliability, resilience, repeatability, all that kind of stuff. So that's when your infrastructure as code thoughts start to make sense. It also depends on, have we done this a million times before? Do we just have a template that we can just whip out of our back pocket and plonk it out there and it takes 5 minutes? Or do we really not understand the shape of the problem we're solving right now, which means, yeah, maybe we should just cobble some stuff together. And that's fine. I mean, if you want the classic case of infrastructure as code starting with commodity and pretty crap hardware, look at Google. Right? They created Borg, and that's what that's what seeded Kubernetes. but it started out of commodity hardware that they would buy secondhand and run it until it fell over.
I just watched all the ex-Googlers in the room just go.
Yeah. I said the word.
They walk among us, right? It's all right.
But they didn't start with Borg. Good. But, yeah. But they started with crap hardware that they bought secondhand and went from there.
So I'm going to cut in there quickly and go back to we're shipping crap to the customer. If CI is green, should it deploy? Good idea? Bad idea?
Is it really green though? I mean,
Well, the test just commented out.
Yes.
you laugh. I've seen that and I've seen worse. So you just want to make sure your CI is actually green. Is it running tests at all? Or is somebody just sneakily maybe bypassed the thing that runs a test and just manually updated all of it?
Or just comment out the assert. That works as well.
Sometimes that works as well. Sometimes you just put an extra assert at the end that just goes assert true equals true. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Like I think if you can get it reliable, maybe. But I think it depends on the context, right? I've seen some teams where they've got it to a level where they trust their infrastructure and they trust their test enough that that when it's green, sure. If it's gone through, and I'm talking about like a lot of stages of checks along the way, not just like it ran the unit test and good.
So you don't need testers.
See, this is what I'm saying. There are some contexts, and I'm talking about infrastructure. I'm talking about products where you've got like, particularly products where it's very, let's say, back-end heavy, where it's very much delivering something that isn't going to be very human consumed. And even then, like it's going to be quite low risk as well, I think. Those are really, really, really well suited for a pipeline where you could get to the point where you could fully automate it, possibly, right? I think there are a lot of contexts where you definitely wouldn't want to have that whole pipeline without a human in there somewhere going, did what we deliver actually make sense to deliver? And I think there's a few different schools of thought on that. There are some people who say, oh no, everything you can just automate the heck out of and get from A to B. But yeah, I still do see some edge cases where you do want to have some human tester, particularly in cases where it's an industry area where you need a subject matter expert to come in and sort of say like, yeah, you delivered something that was according to business requirements, but basically you were just sort of reading off a script and going, yeah, I delivered whatever the BA told me. But now I need somebody to see, did that thing make sense within the context of the greater product? And have we done something here that could actually screw everything up for everybody because it's part of this really complex user workflow, something like that. So it depends.
Well, I guess that's why we have different environment, right? You can deploy to staging or UAT or whatever you call it, and then go to another stage and go to pre-prod.
Yeah. Are we talking about like a developer just pushes code and it just goes straight to prod, or are we talking like after it goes through like 2 weeks of testing and whatever, and there's like a merge approval and blah blah blah?
I'd argue that you should have that capability, but again, it's a trade-off. There is nothing.
A good sense when to not use it.
Yeah, there is nothing inherently wrong with having a git push result in a green build, result in an automated production deployment. I would separate deployment from release. You should have good feature tolerance, right? You put code in production all the damn time. That doesn't mean it runs in production, and it doesn't mean that 100% of your customer base gets exposed to it immediately. But it means that you can at least make sure. Remember we talked about CI? What's the I bit in CI? Integration, right? We actually like smush it together. We smush it together. That's not just to see if our code works. That's to be confident that we haven't broken everybody else's code. So if what we're talking about is having a really solid regression suite that says, look, these are the capabilities that the system really has to support, and we are rock solid confident in our test suite saying, look, they work. We know they work. We've tested they work, and that means from a correctness perspective, from a perf perspective, from a load perspective, this isn't just, we run some unit tests, right? Or on a dev workstation. It means we've deployed it. We've hit it with appropriate HTTP clients. We've confirmed that it's validating API keys. We've deployed it into a known hardware-based perf test environment. We've smashed it. We know what kind of RPS it can take, all those kinds of things. and then we do a graduated rollout where we give it to 0.1% and then 1% and 9% and a 90% or whatever the traffic split is, and we've got automated rollback if it goes wrong. Yes, absolutely you should be able to do that. Does it make sense to do that in a startup with 2 people?
But actually, can I ask a question to the audience? So who has that? Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, good.
But I think just because it's hard, though, it doesn't mean you shouldn't aim for it.
Yeah.
And you have the steps in the process that are the essential, like the human tester or the whatever, change control. Not because they shouldn't be this is in my view anyway, they shouldn't be a necessary step. That you choose to put it there, it's not there because it has to be there, otherwise the process wouldn't work. So you should be striving for that utopia dream.
It seems to me that it shouldn't be there to test whether the software is broken. It's the person should be there to test whether it works for the end user. And you know, I've just been building, you know, a medication management system for someone. So it was more about, I can tell the developer all the things that I need to have in there that you need to be able to put in. But then when I take it to a doctor or a nurse to say, it's now time for you to actually put a piece of medication into that system, it doesn't make sense, you know. So it had to have those people there to make it make sense in the way it was set up. And that's what unit test is for.
It sounds like you need to rehire the BA as the dandruff hire.
Why did the BA talk to the customer? Why can't the customer and the people who are actually writing the code actually like human each other? Maybe with the BA to facilitate if that's necessary, but
translate.
Not translate. Not translate. I hear that a lot. Not translate. Facilitate, yes, but if the dev can't speak human, get a better dev. If you, as an engineer, need a BA to spoon feed you requirements, you are a poor engineer. Get better.
You're a coder.
You're a monkey, effectively, yeah. We don't need that. We don't want that. It's not helpful. Right? Be a good human first. That's part of being a good engineer.
At the same time, keep the consultants employed. Somebody's got to clean up the mess.
If we ignore the problem of an ops team being maybe living in the past, and I could fire them and I could hire a brand new ops team, what are the challenges they should actually bring?
The management that let that ops team live in the past in the first place.
Well let's have, what are the things that a good ops team challenges the devs to do? And even in a cloud native environment, what changes? So what's the mark of a good ops team?
They're not an ops team, maybe. Like I think for me, if you've got no barrier, that you don't have the ops team and the dev team, would be the first step.
Well, and also no barrier between the ops team and the customer. So again, it's that whole picture thinking. So in certain large companies that some of us have worked for, the dev teams would call the business, and the ops team called the dev teams the business.
Or them.
Or them, or they. No, but it was you know, you'd have an engineering team. It's like, oh, we need to do this for the business, and the business were people that, you know, needed a server to put a thing on, and then those dev teams would call, you know, the business, and everyone kind of had that upstream business, and nobody was actually in the business of serving people that wanted to buy stuff. And so you would have a conversation of like, we need to do this. It's like, but that's a firewall change. We couldn't do that. Why do you want to do that? What are you trying to achieve? So somebody's trying to buy something from us. And it's just so siloed into, and everyone was, you know, like you asked a development team, what are we doing this for? And it's, well, the business asked for it. Yes, for what? I don't know, the business just asked for it. The BA told us the business asked for it. And you know, the infrastructure team had their own BAs, their own project managers, who, you know, called the dev teams the business. And so it's that, if you lose that end-to-end picture of like, what are we actually in the business of doing, then you get very focused on the wrong thing.
Yeah, I mean, so I work for a company where we can't do DevOps because we sell hardware appliances. So our customers are completely in control of when they want to deploy software to them. So our DevOps...
Have you told Tesla?
Yeah. Well, yeah, sure. No, I get that. But our DevOps isn't DevOps, it's dev support. right? So our support engineers are the ones that talk to us.
But it's the same mindset though.
Exactly.
So I mean, Octopus was
exactly
really
right.
like this. So, sorry to jump in across everyone again. But so at Octopus, everyone does a support rotation. So
Yes.
Vanessa basically owned support. And did a freaking amazing job, I just want to say out loud in public. But everyone on the team had a support rotation of helping out answer that stuff. Now, if you are a developer and customer support is someone else's problem altogether, you live the most sheltered life on the planet.
Exactly.
When you are having to answer customer queries that come in, and Vanessa would say, that one's yours, your feature, you own that, and you did. That changes the way you make decisions as a developer. So, you know, it became, you know, whenever we talked about a new feature, it wasn't, you know, how are we going to write the code for that or design the classes or whatever. It was, how will people screw this up? And when they do, how do we help them? Like, what is the support cost of any engineering or UX or, you know, whatever feature that we make? What is the support cost of that? And there is nothing that makes you more customer aware than having to deal with frontline customer support. And most developers just never have to do it. And actually, like, I think it was Vanessa, I mean, when the company was 3 people, yeah, everyone did it, but Vanessa really went, everyone needs to own this because, yeah, and it made
I'm
the
not
product
getting yelled at was my
yeah.
thing. Like,
Absolutely.
I'm not getting yelled at for your buggy.
And when we pushed a release out that you know, and it was a weird edge case that from like a release candidate 1 to a release candidate 4, missed some migration, and like we'd have customers that were deploying, you know, new versions like RCs of our product to their production environments, and you know, all of a sudden, like the support on a Friday night, this just killed my configuration. We're all on there, like we're all on Slack, we're all on the phone, we're all on Zoom, whatever, fixing it and getting a build out. So you might not have a website that you can measure traffic on, but anywhere where is the barrier between you and the customers, if you put people on that front line, that's what we're getting.
Completely agree. But I think the corollary of that is that what you do is you end up with engineers a lot of the time that they only see the negatives of your products too, right? So as engineers build this and they're going, well, I'm building this for this customer, that's cool. And they're doing their support rotation, and all of our engineers do tier 2 support. That's how we work.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that's important that's not really talked about in this is also getting the customers to talk to getting engineers to talk to the happy customers as well, that have actually used the product and are happy with it, because that gives them the feedback of, I guess it's not really...
We get happy customers too.
Yeah, I mean, most Octopus customers, while they'd get cranky about some things, they'd start off their support with, I looked everywhere and I couldn't find the answer, and I'm so sorry I'm bothering you. I love the product, but...
Yeah.
So if you don't have happy customers, maybe it's just a shit product.
But they're people who come to you because they've got a problem with your product. And if that's all the engineers see, then they've got a very biased view of your product.
They do,
and that can really taint your engineers' view of how the
It's also a failure of your organisation.
That's something that...
As a whole, fundamentally, it's a failure of your organisation. Your organisation hasn't effectively provided self-help that allowed them to rectify the problem in the first place before having to escalate it to an engineer. And again, my clientele, I deal with Major League Baseball, I deal with high-performance sport, which are a very demanding client. If they can't...
Nothing on developers. Software developers, the whiniest bunch of people on the planet.
On the planet.
So no, we're talking about what customers do you put in contact with your engineers?
Yeah,
all of them.
But there's something else. We missed a point here though. The point, and you do raise a good point. If you only ever hear the negatives, yeah, you are getting a very, very biased view of what's happening with your product. However, that's both an experience design failure and it's also an instrumentation failure, right? That's where, to the question a little bit earlier, one of the things that the ops people should be able to do is track customer behavior. They should be able to tell you how you can better instrument your software so that you can see the path through it that people are taking. So these are the happy customers. How do we know? Because they come here, they spend 5 minutes, they give us a whole bunch of money, then they go away, and then they come back again next week. Right? This is a recurring behavior. They never bleat at us. They never phone, they never shout, but they just keep coming back and giving us money. Awesome. What are they doing? What's their experience? How can we then observe that experience? Can we replay their session? Can we look at which pages they visited? There are so many ways that we can instrument these things, and we should be instrumenting them, because dealing with angry, unhappy, dissatisfied customers is only part of it. And in a lot of cases, that's almost already a lost battle, right? We've got an angry customer, we can turn them into a happy customer. There's a lot of expense in that, right? It's a whole lot more effective to take it, yeah, I'm all right kind of customer and turn them into your proponent, right? It's a whole lot easier to double down on a good customer experience and make a great customer experience and keep that loyalty. So if you're not doing that, that's something that you should be spending effort on as well.
Yeah, I 100% agree that the ops team should be focusing more on the business metrics. I hope that was what your point was there. So in answer to your question there, so I mentioned I think I've taken the side of ops team people everywhere in this panel, but
it's one team.
Okay, so ops at the company I work for is called SRE. So it used to be called DevOps, but then people worked out what DevOps meant, so we renamed it to something that didn't know what that meant.
That's what DevOps means.
Yeah, so we just like it to be like people who do stuff around the place. But so pretty much we have all of our deployment automation stuff. Like our devs can pretty much deploy stuff in Jenkins. They don't really bother us too much. I think they just, I don't know, exist in the background. And our ops team, I don't know if this is weird. Like maybe you guys know. So our SRE team is the same team as our internal help desk team. Is that weird?
No.
It's great.
Yeah. So we don't. So we spend a lot of time with business. So I spend about 50% of my time with the digital analytics kind of people who do kind of what you guys say.
Do you call them the business?
No, called Jeff.
Excellent.
Funny. And I think that's really, in the last year, we've been doing a lot more of that, like working with other business teams. We've kind of got like plants in like the sales team and like the finance team and all this kind of stuff. Of
collaborating.
Yeah. This is one of the reasons I don't actually like the phrase DevOps. And you know, people make fun of like DevSecOps or whatever. I think there's like Dev, Legal.
Well, who made fun of it the most?
Ops.
You or him? Dev, Biz, Sex, something other ops.
I did have to shrink my font to get the
get it all in. Yeah.
We even have lawyers here.
Yeah, 100%. Like the DevOps.
Roll call, Mark.
Yeah, like legal compliance or something like that is one of the areas we look at in our compliance. That's something that you can 100% automate, and that's something where I think, I was saying before about the DevOps isn't just about the developers like swarming to take over your entire business. It's about respecting the other person that you're working with, whether the silo is devs versus ops, or whether it's the tech team versus the legal department or the sales department or whatever. Like insert like your favorite team to hate. Yeah, it's about respecting. Okay, this is a horrible sales guy. And he's wearing like a suit and he's got a tie and it's really horrible and he's like talking about how much money we're losing and blah blah blah. But you've got to respect where they're coming from, and even if they can't code, I think that's something. Like we actually, I've started a lot of relationships with people in say the sales team or finance team or something, like people who couldn't code. And I think a lot of people here secretly would kind of respect those people less. But we've worked together and sometimes, they end up writing, even if it's just glue scripts between some things that they're doing, but they've learned some stuff from that. I've learned about balance sheets from our financial controller. She's amazing. She's taught me all this stuff, and she's all these like Excel sheet things, and then I've taught her some stuff that you can do with JavaScript and Google Sheets and stuff like that. And it's just like respecting that they are really talented in their own field, and they have this business knowledge that you don't necessarily have. I think you need to have that understanding, that humility of knowing that they know something that you don't know.
Yeah, everyone brings a different skill set,
yeah, exactly.
But we're all the same team, which is selling to that person. Yeah.
I think one key point is to be open-minded, right? Listen to others and see what you can do. So I think someone over there talk about ops, because ops used to be, the bastard operator from hell, have all the power, you get nothing, talk about firewall and stuff. This is really bad, right? It's all about being open-minded, trying to understand what other people are trying to achieve, and how we can sometimes compromise, maybe find a solution to get there. The firewall, we have change control, but today we just don't do that, and we get that out because we believe that is going to fix something for the customer, right? We're not going to wait through this whole workflow, but we have to do something, and what can we do there without taking too many risks?
Yes. That's right. So you said an interesting thing there about what other people are trying to achieve. From a management hierarchy perspective, though, one of the things that the senior executives in your organization need to be trying to create is the lack of other people. it's not they're trying to achieve one thing and I'm trying to achieve something different and in opposition, like, uptime versus number of releases or whatever. It's what are we collectively trying to achieve? What problem are we actually assembled here as a team in order to solve? And that has to include people like, your salespeople. Well, look, you want customers and you want their money. Well, hey, guess what? Yeah, I have to wear the suit and the shoes and the rest of it, because otherwise they won't talk to me. All the way through to, the people who are doing your frontline support and all the rest of it. There should be one unified goal. If not, well, why does your company, why does your organization even exist? What even are you? So, yeah, the whole other people, there's value in looking at other people's perspectives, but there's also a lot of value in trying to actually create that shared goal so that you don't even have to worry about, well, they want a thing that's different to me. It's, we actually want the same thing, and then we just have slightly different perspectives on how we can best get there. And it very much reframes the conversation to be a whole lot more constructive and usually a bit more collaborative as well.
You beautiful dreamer in your little utopia. Last question, who wants it before we wrap this up? Yes? Louis.
This is more of a continuation on this topic, and I find it very fascinating because at the end of the day, however technical or non-technical you are in the business, it's the undercurrent theme of it all is about culture. I'd like to hear some success stories about turning a culture of individuals who are maybe siloed into becoming more of a, a multidisciplinary type team. How do you bridge that gap from turning your archaic dinosaur furniture, those people in that corner over there type mentality into, well, we're all going to work together and it's going to be great? Because, it's really difficult to sit as an individual in an organization who's in that, entrenched in that, and it's really difficult to upsell to your management, to upsell upstream. That's one of the hardest things to do. I'd like to hear some of your success stories.
I have one unless someone else does, because I've talked a lot.
I'll go as a professional DevOps seller. My biggest strategy, and we have a lot of silos, including testing, but I've been successfully selling this idea of DevOps to all these teams by finding out their individual pain points. So it's a little bit more of a strategy about how to engage them more than anything else. So I would have testers say, we can't reliably run our test automation because all the environments are so different. I'm like, I can solve that problem. I can solve it with this method. And then business will be like, we've got this really long cadence and everything's taking so long and we're tying up people. And I'm like, we can also solve that problem. And you start seeing all of the different problems inside the different silos, and they're all answered by the same solution, but they don't understand that because it's not in their terms. They don't want to know that, testing automation or deployment automation is going to solve it if they're in ops, because we're not using those words. But if you start to say, this will run the configuration and we have a single package and we don't have environment-specific configuration anymore, that's done at deployment time, they start to see a picture and start to buy in. And so I've very successfully found all the problems in the different teams and said, we can solve this, but I need your help because I don't understand how you're doing it manually, so let's have a little talk. And getting them engaged and selling it in that way, selling what is going to make their lives better and how the solutions tie together and getting the buy-in from that point. And I've done it across pretty much all of the silos now. And I've had people come to me and say, that guy hated us and now he's like really into it, what did you do? And I'm like, I listened to him and he told me he had a problem that we can solve really easily, but he didn't realize that because his keywords weren't heard and they didn't match what people were talking about, because we had very specific projects being sold, but not ideas and concepts and culture. And so listening is a very good step, and then selling an idea that matches their world is how a strategy, more than answering a question, but it's a strategy to get everything started in a change culture for them to understand they will get payoff of this thing that's not part of their job. is how I've done it.
Yeah, I can speak to the problem of trying to break down some silos. Most of my work for the last couple of years has been going to different organisations and trying to break down the silo between QA teams and development teams. And I find that one of the key things to do is to be clearly identifying areas of wastage. And if you've got visibility into what these teams are doing, it's pretty easy to find the bits where there's wastage there. And convert that into something that the managers care about and understand, which is usually money, right? And it's pretty easy to do if you can find out how many engineering hours are being wasted by the processes you already have, or by the silos where you've got something thrown over the wall and then this person has to notice it and care about it and do something about it, gets thrown back, and then the same thing happens and you've lost several days in this weird feedback loop. You can add up the amount of engineering hours lost, or even the amount of project hours lost between another thing that managers care about, which is you've coded a feature and it's not in production yet, because they're always on your back about that, right? Then you can present that to the managers and go, hey, here's two things I can save you, right? Which is engineering hours, which equals money, and also the large amount of time it's currently taking you to get from your idea to the idea coded in production. And that's usually a pretty good sales tactic right from the start. They go, oh great, how? Make money from home. So yeah, then you show them your one weird trick, which is usually trying to get people to actually care about each other's stuff, so that they don't have this weird wall in between blocking all of this communication and process workflow that happens, right? So, and it doesn't matter if it's like dev and QA or dev and ops or dev and anything or anybody and anybody. Like, the more you can break down those walls, the faster people can work together.
So you say lean software principles?
I didn't say any such thing there.
Just wanted to be wastage.
But I think the problem is, or one of the challenges is that it seems to all stem with devs, and like it's always, well, it is like, and this was what started me on the whole DevOps thing. Like, I was in a dev team, and the devs were getting the shits with the testers because the testers were always hopeless and this and that, but it wasn't the testers' fault. The devs were churning out rubbish code, throwing it at them.
Yeah, the testers didn't like the devs.
And also the ops people were also rubbish because of the same thing. The devs were churning out rubbish and chucking it over.
It's the problem with the waterfall. Shit runs down.
Yeah, that's right. But I think for me, breaking that
Sorry,
down,
that's education.
becoming friends with some of the tests, like working in a team where you're friends with people suddenly solves all of those problems, because you have respect for friends. You don't just kind of go, oh, those guys are hopeless. And I think one of the things we did at TATS was sneakily just invite our friends to lunch with other friends who are in another team that's an ops team or a test team. And that's a really slow burn, but eventually you get there where...
So sorry, you had to play politics in a large organisation?
Yeah.
That's what you're telling me? Okay.
Yeah, but it's okay because there was food involved.
There was food, yeah. That's Linda Rising's influence strategies. Like she's got like 10 influence strategies, and one of them is use food.
And waterboarding.
Waterboarding. That's a last resort. But, we are naturally inclined to sit and eat with people and tell stories. And that sort of goes out the window in a lot of big companies. And you take people to lunch and they eat food and tell their stories. We're naturally inclined then to bond with people and want to help them.
I think it's worth channeling Norm Kurth here for a second as well, right? Everyone's done an agile retrospective. Yes? No? Everyone's
of course.
No. Everyone's got to say. Are you certified? Did you sell one? Right? The retrospective prime directive without actually knowing where it came from. Black name, not Kurth. But basically, the fundamental premise is no one set out to do a bad job. The devs did a shit job, and the testers did a shit job. Maybe those are going to shit job, right? Nobody wakes up in the morning and goes, you know what? I would like to suck at my job today. Right? Nobody does. Well, okay, maybe.
Are you sure you haven't?
So, okay, most people don't know, right? But nobody is trying to fail. Nobody's trying to make anybody else's life difficult just for funsies, right? People are doing the best they can with what they have and what they know. And the critical thing there is what they know is different to what other people know. right? We view DevOps as, well, of course it's just bloody simple. You just get everybody to talk to each other and everybody shares responsibilities and they all have a shared goal and, well, how is this difficult, right? But when people are coming from a different background, when they haven't experienced that, it's very difficult to just take something that academically they can read and understand and have them internalize it and marry that up with their day-to-day experience operating under the constraints of their organization. So everybody's trying to do the best they can. We need to show them that it's possible. We need to make them want to do it better. And we need to actually give them the tools to move towards that better utopia. It can't just be, well, today we're doing DevOps and it's wonderful and magic, because the reality is it's all going to fall in here, right? We also then need to give them the strategies to get there, piece by piece. Here's what we're going to change, here's the sequence, here's how it's going to work, don't worry, your job is safe, here is why we value you, here are the parts of your job that we value, and here are the parts that we view as wasteful, but we value your contribution. You know, your job is not under threat. Your employment here is not under threat. We just want to do things differently to be more efficient, more effective, to achieve this shared goal that we all kind of agree is the point that we're here.
Yeah, and I think the bit you said there where little by little is really important too, because if you try to just pull the rug out from people and go, we're changing everything, it's all DevOps now, people don't like that. Yeah, but if you have a plan and you can sort of say, okay, you know, if you're working in sprints or whatever, I don't know, just chip away at a little bit each week. Go, okay, this week we're going to do a few hours, dedicate that to working on this key piece of infrastructure together. We're going to form a little together team to do that, you know, and you just keep on going little bit, so that it calms everybody down a bit. So especially the people in charge of
the resources,
launching things to production at a certain due date, you know, who are like, we don't have time to spend on all of this together crap. We have to get things into production. And go, no. It's just like a couple of hours a week. It's fine. It'll get there.
As long as it's in Raleigh.
Yeah, as long as it's in Raleigh. Yeah.
Though I think there is something to be said about if you're going to go, like, it makes sense to go incrementally, but also if you're going to do it, you kind of need to say, right, we're doing this thing, we're going to do it incrementally, but we're doing it because you've seen, you know, are we doing this thing or are we not doing this thing? Because, you know, I'm allowed to not do the DevOps, and so I'm just going to keep doing what I was doing, even though management said we're doing it.
No, that's really true, actually. That is it has to be tracked, it has to be visible work. It can't just be, we're doing this in our spare time. Nobody has spare time. Nobody's people have spare time. It has to be given the same level of importance as other work. Otherwise, yeah, like you say, it just gets forgotten about and like, oh, I don't know if I was meant to do that or not. It just seemed like an idea someone had and we've forgotten now.
Sometimes there are things that can't be small and incremental. So we just moved from SVM to Git. And that's a big move for a lot of people. So sometimes we can't incrementally move from one source control to another. So you have to keep that in mind. There are sometimes big tasks that just have to be done.
There was a 20-year lead time on that move.
I did force the issue. I said they couldn't have Octopus deploy unless they moved to Git. So I forced it. Yeah.
We did CDS to Git. You know, it could be worse, right?
Yeah.
Sarah and I were discussing RCS to CVS earlier.
You could still be on TFS. Anyway, I think that's about a wrap for tonight. We'll be hanging around a bit if you want to ask the panelists some more questions afterwards. Please join me in thanking them for their contributions tonight.